Ron Siegel Radio, your home and mortgage connection.
You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Show with local and national expert Ron Siegel. Now, here's Ron.
And hello again. Welcome to Ron Siegel Radio. This is the show with no real boundaries as we discuss current events, financial markets, politics, sports, even poking fun at the rest of the media. This is the show that connects the dots of confusion delivered by conflicting media reports. We connect the dots so you know the actions you can take, how your family or business can benefit in current events. Most of all, thank you for joining me. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day. We have a very focused show. We only chat about items that affect the roof over your head, your bank account, and anything I feel would benefit you. And let me remind you, if you ever have any more finance-related questions, I am the consumer advocate looking out for you, and you can reach out to me directly, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or RonSiegelRadio.com. Just remember, that's the number you call anytime for assistance. When you call that number, it comes directly to me first. There are operators standing by.
Quiet, numbskulls. I'm broadcasting.
While I do have a great team when it comes to developing a financing plan, a plan to save you money, I personally work with you. Even if you don't have any needs today, save this number in your phone for future reference. 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. Before we get into our intriguing content today, please join me in welcoming our featured guest and repeat offender on Ron Siegel Radio. Paul Peters is with us. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Ron. Truly an honor. Thank you.
Glad to have you with us. Hey, and I think it's a time that we got to celebrate today. We celebrate every day on Ron Siegel Radio, and I'm looking. There's a lot of good things on the celebrations day. There are some that could cause some potential issues. Today's National Wear Your Pajamas to Work Day. Now, if you look at the image that they've got on the calendar, it could be any one of us today that are involved with today's radio broadcast, because the image shows a glass table with a gentleman sitting there, and he's got pajama bottoms with a sports shirt and sports coat on. Now, I'm not saying whether I'm wearing pajama bottoms or not, but I do have the collared shirt here. We're not going to ask Paul or Josh, this is a family broadcast, so we're not going to get into that. Today's National Bean Counter Day, so we'll have to send that notice out to all of our accounting friends. Now, the bean counters, they're celebrating something different today. Today's April 16th as we record this. They're celebrating that it's not April 15th any longer. And anybody that didn't get their taxes done either is in trouble or they have an extension in place. Orchid Day? Okay, maybe I'll have to go check out the orchids in Hawaii. That's the only place I know to go get orchids. Today's National Banana Day. Do one of those every day. And the one that really made the top of the list today, because I have beaten anorexia, National Eggs Benedict Day. Now, let's see, Josh has got a pretty good picture on there, but now think about this Eggs Benedict as you're looking at the picture. If you're watching us on RonSiegelRadio.tv or any of our socials or the ABC News and Talk AM 1490 FM 98.1 video feed, think about this one. Now, Josh has the traditional Eggs Benedict right there with the Canadian bacon on there. Take that Canadian bacon off of that and add a crab cake. Now you're talking. If you like that, that would be the way to go. National Eggs Benedict Day. I might have to go and indulge after the broadcast. Let's see what the markets are doing today. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 76 points. The NASDAQ is up 111 points. S&P 500 is up 23. We're looking at oil. That one is up. We don't like seeing oil going up, but it is what it is. So oil is up $2.30 a barrel right now. Gasoline prices, $4.09 a gallon is the national average. No, we don't get to pay that in California because we like high taxes. We like high fees. We like imported oil. rather than getting domestic oil. So we're paying $5.86 a gallon for Gavin's gas.
Ow!
Yeah. Now think about this. Gavin wants to run for president, so you could have that nationwide too.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Yeah, I got a bad feeling about that one as well. Okay, let's see what else is going on. Looks like we might have some good news out of the Middle East. I see just coming across the wire, 5 o'clock Eastern time today. There's supposed to be a ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. That'd be nice if that actually happens. You just never know in the Middle East what's going to really happen. You would think that the oil prices would start dropping with some of this good news coming out of there. But maybe until we see the Strait of Hormuz open, we may not see anything good on the oil price market. But it's $93.54 a barrel. Not horrible. And again, if you look at that and you see that gasoline prices are dropping around the nation, it looks like from a week ago, we're down about 7 cents nationally. Not in California, but 7 cents nationally is getting, we'll probably get, we're not too far. I've been watching the big story on the news is they all want to ask the Treasury Secretary and others, when are we going to see that 3 handle? First off, I should explain 3 handle is a financial term. That would just mean that the first digit in the gas price is a 3. So right now we're at 409. If we got to 399, that would be a 3 handle. Right now we're at a 4 handle. So it wouldn't surprise me to see that 3 handle in the next couple of 3 weeks. That would be a good thing because as we get closer to travel season, Memorial Day on, it'll be nice seeing gas prices around the country a little bit lower. I might have to go and visit Josh for a little bit there to see if we get lower gas price. Josh, where are you at now? I'm looking at the national average, and it says the statewide average. I shouldn't say national. State average says 495. Is it a little lower than that? 479. Okay, so you're $1 a gallon cheaper than we are. Over $1 a gallon cheaper. Now, I guess if you go to a state line, you're not going to see that $1 a gallon cheaper. But when you get closer toward the big city, you're going to be able to pay $1 a gallon cheaper. Paul, I don't even want to ask you where you're at because your locations are probably way cheaper. Are you in Texas or Carolina?
Yeah, we're in Texas and we're at the 3 handle right now. So
you're $2 a gallon cheaper than we are in California. Yeah. Nice to be in America, I guess. I can't say Venezuela anymore because they're probably freer in Venezuela than we are in California. So can't go that direction. But we keep on watching, we keep on hoping, and eventually we'll get there. There's all kinds of news going on right now. A lot of big question marks going on with the Federal Reserve. And there was some interesting stories coming out that if you follow this, so the Wall Street Journal has a writer, Nick Timiraos. He's been labeled the Fed mole. So when the Fed wants to get information out, it is he who comes out with that information. And he shares it in his articles. His latest article basically says that Fed Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell.
Such an idiot.
No, he doesn't say that Jerome Powell's an idiot. That's my commentary. But he says Powell would love to move on and resign and leave the Federal Reserve when his chairmanship expires in May. But he's not going to do it as long as the probe is going on to the new building and as long as there is the DOJ issues going on. So I guess they have their way of getting rid of Powell if they really want to. And that's according to Nick Timiraos. And everything that we see, when Timiraos says something, if you're old like I am, you probably remember E.F. Hutton. And when E.F. Hutton speaks, people listen. Well, Timiraos probably is too young to even remember E.F. Hutton. But when Timiraos speaks, people should listen because he's got the ear of the Federal Reserve. And when they want to get information out, it gets out to Timiraos. He writes an article. And then all of a sudden, what Timiraos had to say materializes shortly thereafter. You are listening to Ron Siegel Radio, discussing your real estate, current events, and the financial markets. When we come back, the cultural divide. Can we solve that on Ron Siegel Radio? Well, I don't have the answers, but maybe Paul Peters does. Rent or buy, the real trade-off most people don't talk about. And here's the credit score truth nobody taught you in school. All that and more. Reach me anytime. Off-air number 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or ronsiegelradio.com, facebook.com/Ron Siegel Radio. And if you miss any part of our broadcast, Ron Siegel 1 on YouTube, Ron Siegel, the numeral 1 on YouTube. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few.
Ron Siegel Radio. Your home and mortgage connection.
Are you a veteran, own a home, and need money? The Siegel Lending Team is here to help veterans refinance and get the money they need. The VA 100 lets you borrow up to 100% of your home's value, refinance your mortgages, consolidate credit cards, and lower your payments by an average of $700 a month. And the Siegel Lending Team knows that character means more than a credit score. Call 800-306-1990. That's 800-306-1990. Rate subject to change without notice. Licensed by the California Department of Corporations, NMLS 21037, and DRE number 018694452. You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Show with local and national expert Ron Siegel. Now, here.
Welcome back to Ron Siegel Radio. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day on Ron Siegel Radio or anytime at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. The Mortgage Minute today being brought to you by rsrlinks.com/mobile app, rsrlinks.com/mobile app, and every day at this time, OBMMI. They provide the most comprehensive, accurate, timely, and interactive analysis of pricing ever conducted in the mortgage industry, calculated from actual locked rates with consumers across 35% of all mortgage transactions nationwide. They do not tell us points paid, points received, or the APR. They tell us the number you need to put in your mortgage calculator to determine your principal and interest payment. If you don't have a mortgage calculator, we're now up to over 70 financial calculators, all for the asking, all free to you. rsrlinks.com/calculators. rsrlinks.com/calculators. What did rates do yesterday? Well, we've got the mixed bag. 3 down, 2 up. Conventional 30-year fix, 6.247. That was down. Jumbo 30-year fix, 6.476. That was up. FHA 30-year fix, 6.026. That was down. VA 30-year fix, 5.858. That was up. And the USDA 30-year fix, 5.916. That was down. So it looks like we got a bit of a roller coaster going right there. If you want our thoughts about the market each and every business day morning, as early as the data allows, rsrlinks.com/HBOD. That is the Ron Siegel Radio community. It is free to you. rsrlinks.com/HBOD. What's the market doing today? That's the question mark. The S&P 500, that's up 27.3. The 10-year Treasury up about 1 basis point, 4.292. And we've got the mortgage bond completely flat. Par 98 right now. Par 98 on that 30-year bond. Why is this happening? Well, it's all about the oil. Oil prices are elevated, but come off the highs and are settling right now. We're looking at WTI at 93.48. That's up $2 today. The markets are waiting updates on peace talks between the U.S. and Iran, which are supposed to happen over the next week, ahead of the next week's ceasefire expiration. Lebanon and Israel also appeared to be talking for the first time in 34 years. And it looks like now those talks have come to a ceasefire, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Important, Pakistan said that a peace deal between Lebanon and Israel is essential for U.S. and Iranian peace talks. The markets are also waiting to see what happens when Powell's turn. Well, before I get into that, I should mention that just my opinion, and I don't have President Trump's cell phone number, but I will tell you, it would not surprise me if they don't come to a an agreement on the ceasefire. If it looks like there's meaningful talks, wouldn't surprise me to see it extended. Just my opinion, and we'll see what happens. So now let's move on there. The markets, again, waiting to see what's happened with Powell's term. It's up on May 15th, the next Fed chair, Kevin Warsh, but his confirmation is being delayed because Senator Tom Tillis refuses to give his needed nomination due to the probe into the Fed's renovation project. If Warsh's nomination is delayed, who's going to be the interim Fed chair? That's the question. Historically, there have been times that the current Fed chair stays in the interim period, but going back to the 70s, 80s, there has been instances where the president has chosen the Fed chair, even though the Fed disagreed that they had the power to do so. It's an unclear area, but there are new laws since then that require the Senate's approval, which would make it more difficult. President Trump has threatened to fire Powell if he stays on after his term ends. There again, does the president have that authority? And that case has already been heard at the Supreme Court level. Has not seen, I don't think we've seen any kind of a judgment come out on that one. Fed's Beige Book asks business contacts about economic conditions in the Fed's 12 districts. Released yesterday, economic activity increased at a slight to modest pace across most regions, while inflation remained moderate overall, outside of the increases seen due to rising oil prices. This is similar to what we saw in the PPI core and import prices. The labor market remains stable, but several noted increased demand for temporary or contract works, and firms remain cautious about committing to permanent hires. AI productivity has made it possible to delay or reduce hiring. It seems we continue to be in a low hire, low fire environment. Consumers appear to be feeling it. The Beige Book reported that consumer spending was down. Businesses could not pass on price increases as there was more price sensitivity, and that traffic at food banks was higher. Don't like that one. New York Fed President John Williams said that he felt that the war in Iran was causing higher inflation in short term and slowdown in the economy. He does think it will pass, forecasting that inflation will be in the range of 2.75 to 3% this year, but then falling to the Fed's target of 2% next year. He thinks growth will be a decent at 2 to 2.5%, while he sees unemployment rate being in the range of 4.3 to 4.5%, with the current rate at 4.3. Initial jobless claims measures individuals filing for unemployment benefits for the very first time fell 11,000 to 207,000. Figure continues to remain very muted. Continued claims of those who continue to receive benefits after their initial claim rose 31,000 to 1.82 million. This figure has been a bit lower than what we have been seeing. There are benefits expiring at the same time. That's the Mortgage Minute, brought to you by rsrlinks.com/mobile app, rsrlinks.com/mobile app. So our friend Paul Peters, a best-selling author, busy writing away. He seems like I don't know, book a month club or something like that, Paul. It seems like you're a pretty busy guy.
Yeah, feels like it. Yes, I have a message, and I'm trying to get it out to bring some sanity to our crazy world.
Boy, if you can get a message out, bring some sanity to this world. I think there might be a job for you at the Vatican or something like that. I don't know. There's a lot of craziness.
Yeah, well, I really think the Vatican, in my own personal opinion, needs some PR work on this latest debacle on the communication between religion and politics. So, which is the two topics we're supposedly not supposed to talk about.
Yeah, and something that's kind of crazy because the two people that are arguably the leaders in each, are the two that seem to be crossing the line, and might cause a little bit more conflict than either one of them probably would like.
Well, it's interesting. I was on the lead into the cultural divide is when diversity becomes division. That's where you have the cultural divide, and you have, and you know this because you're on the air. When you have something like this between the Pope and the president, a lot of things are taken out of context per se, and people have an opinion. So it basically creates a division on what's the ultimate goal, and obviously peace. I believe the Pope would say that, and I believe the president would say that. But the media, unfortunately, wants to reinforce their own ideology in regards to what they think the people want to hear. And unfortunately, that just creates further division.
Yeah, how could they sell anything or get any eyeballs? And I'll tell you this, because I do a live radio show every day. What is the goal of every piece of media? When you talk about news, a newspaper, they're dying anyway, but that's a whole different story. Newspaper, radio, TV, any of it, the goal of every show, no matter what anybody wants to tell you, they want to put out a good product, yes. What is their goal? One thing only. They want to get you to the commercials because that's what pays the bill. Now, if you came out and said, the Pope has a peace plan and the president has a peace plan, what would that sell? Right? It won't sell a thing when you talk about the Pope saying, whatever he said and the president saying whatever they said and the interpretation from each side, when they can cause a riff, then they can sell something and all they're doing is echoing, right? So you turn on CNN or MSNBC or whatever they call themselves now, or Fox News, they're going to tell their audience what the audience wants to hear because they want their audience to stay there long enough to get to the commercial or from the tease to the story, which generally has a commercial in between.
Correct.
Right? So wouldn't sell anything, Paul. So maybe if you can come up with a solution that will sell a book or two, maybe we can get there with that idea. So tell me about the new book.
So just kind of update, the Inheritance did go #1, so I'm proud to announce that. But I have a book coming out that I collaborated with Jack Canfield called The Heart of Success. So I'm just a contributing author in that in regards to how do you determine and achieve success. And mine happens to be focused on living your purpose. And like I said, we've had discussions about that. And that's my main message, helping people live their purpose, their calling, what they're called to do. And so that's exciting. And I've got another one coming out called—
Wait, Paul, before you go on, how do we know what our purpose is?
How do we know our purpose? Well, you and I could have a long discussion on that. A lot of it has to do with your passions, your joys, what you're gifted at doing. Like for you, you're on the radio, you're on TV. I mean, you're doing and living out your purpose because you're passionate about that, and you've been very successful. So you got a track record that you're living out your purpose. For me, I'm a successful author, business owner, so I'm living out my purpose. But I found my purpose through my pain. And unfortunately, a lot of us realize what our purpose is as we go through the challenges and figure out what we're supposed to do and not do. So,
okay, so I interrupted you there. Let's move on to the next chapter.
Sure. So I've got another book called the Purpose Code Blueprint, where I go into much more detail in regard to a scientific evidence in regards to the genes, the DNA, that there's actually a scripted purpose built within us. We just need to discover what that is. And, for example, most people believe in some concept of God. And so God kind of crafted within our DNA what we're called to do. And then basically through a relationship with him, he basically guides and communicates what we're supposed to do to live a successful life. So that's what the blueprint, Purpose Code Blueprint is all about.
And which is the one that just went bestseller?
The Inheritance, which is right here, that went bestseller. My next book coming out is The Heart of Success with Jack Canfield, and then following on the tails of that will be the Purpose Code Blueprint.
So, and how long have you been writing, Paul?
I started my writing in 2021. I'm already up to 6 books and many more to follow. So,
it's kind of interesting when your comment that when we first got started in this about having something to say. I'm a big fan of Billy Joel.
Yeah.
And when he retired the first time, he basically said, I don't think I have anything else to say. And when he came back, he said, I got more to say. And I just heard recently him saying again that he thinks he's said it all. And I don't know that you ever really say it all, do you?
No, we have a message. And I jokingly told some friends yesterday when I filled out an investment survey and said, when do you plan on retiring? I said, when I'm horizontal. I said, when my last breath is spoken, then I know that I've done my duty. So it's like, we have a message, and, we're not just living on the laurels of what we did in the past. As long as we're still breathing, we have a purpose. So, yeah.
And that's kind of the challenge some people have is that they look at it and they say, okay, what is my purpose and how do I live that? And I think if you want to have a happy life, my personal opinion is if you can find a vocation, a way to make money with what is also your purpose, you might have, how do they say it? You never work a day in your life.
Correct.
So we're going to continue our conversation with Paul Peters when we come back. We're going to chat about all of these things. We're going to also talk about the cultural divide. Does he have a solution? We'll talk about that. And rent or buy, the real trade-off most people don't talk about, and more. Reach me anytime. Off-air number, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or RonSiegelRadio.com, Facebook.com/Ron Siegel Radio. And if you missed any part of our broadcast, Ron Siegel 1 on YouTube, Ron Siegel, the number 1 on YouTube. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few.
Ron Siegel Radio. Your home and mortgage connection.
Confused about the home buying process? Or curious how much you really know about buying a home? Take the First Home IQ quiz to test your understanding of buying a home. Created by the nonprofit First Home IQ, this 5-minute quiz will give you a score, what you missed, and why. Take the quiz in 5 minutes at rsrlinks.com/FHIQ and find out what you need to know about buying your first home. That's rsrlinks.com/FHIQ.
You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Show with local and national expert Ron Siegel. Now, here's Ron.
Welcome back to Ron Siegel Radio. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day on Ron Siegel Radio or anytime at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. Real-time real estate segment today being brought to you by rsrmoney.com, rsrmoney.com. Rent or buy, the real trade-off most people don't talk about. You've probably asked yourself lately, is it even worth trying to buy a home right now? It's a question a lot of people are asking. With today's home prices and mortgage rates, renting can feel like the easier path. In some cases, it might even seem like the only realistic option right now. And if that's where you are, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're weighing the decision, there's one part of the conversation that doesn't get talked about enough. It's what each choice does for your future. What renting really gets you and what it doesn't. Depending on your situation, renting does have some advantages. Lower upfront costs, less responsibility, more flexibility to move when you want. But even with those benefits, a Bank of America survey found 70% of aspiring homeowners worry about what long-term renting means for their future. And that concern comes down to one thing. You're not building anything for your future. Also, Yahoo Finance explains, quote, paying rent doesn't build equity. You get a place to live, but no ownership stake, no price appreciation, and no asset to leverage for future borrowing or investment, unquote. So while renting may feel easier, the flexibility you get comes at a cost. On the other hand, owning a home is one of the most consistent ways people build wealth over time. Why? When you're a homeowner, you gain something called equity. That's the difference between what your home is worth and what you owe. That equity grows with every monthly payment you make. It also gets a boost as home values go up through the years, and it adds up quicker than you may think. Today, the National Association of Realtors, NAR, says the average homeowner's net worth is 43 times greater than that of a renter. If you're watching us on RonSiegelRadio.tv, any of our socials, or the ABC News and Talk AM 1490, FM 98.1 video feed, you are seeing a chart of homeowners' net worth. The dollars in the visual don't lie. On average, here's how net worth compares. Homeowners, $430,000, renters, $10,000. And it's not because homeowners make widely different decisions day to day. It's because over time, one path builds something and the other doesn't. So sure, buying comes with some upfront costs and more responsibility, but it's basically a savings account you can live in. And here's something else interesting. The net worth gap between renters and homeowners has been widening over time, not shrinking. If you look back at the reports on net worth through the years, you can see the gap is growing as homeowners gain wealth and renters stay stuck in the rental trap. And that's on the screen right now. Even in 2025, when home prices were moderating, homeowners still gained even more ground, and that tells you something important. When you can afford it and you're ready for the responsibility, history shows buying is usually worth it in the long run, because either way, you're paying for someone's mortgage and building someone's net worth. When you rent, it's your landlord's mortgage, not yours. But when you buy, your monthly payments help build equity. The question is, whose do you want to pay, yours or theirs? The short answer is it depends on your situation. While the long-term benefits of buying are clear, that doesn't mean the timing is right for everyone right now, and that's okay. You should only buy a home once you're ready and the numbers work for you. You want to see the numbers? rsrlinks.com/RVO. rsrlinks.com/RVO. It's our rent versus own analysis we put together for you. Whether you're looking to buy now or planning for the future, the first step is the same. You should have a quick conversation with a local real estate agent about your goals, timeline, and budget. They can help you run the numbers and see what's realistic. You may find buying is closer than you thought, and if not, you'll at least know exactly where it will take, what it'll take to get there. Because the sooner you have a plan, the sooner you just can decide what makes sense instead of wondering if it ever will. Bottom line, renting may feel more doable today, but over time, it could cost you. If you want to ditch renting and start building something for your future, it starts with a simple conversation. Let's connect, talk about your specific goals, and explore your options so you're ready when the time is right for you. That's the Real-Time Real Estate segment brought to you by rsrmoney.com, rsrmoney.com. Continuing our conversation this morning, we are chatting with Paul Peters, best-selling author and rapidly growing library of books and thoughts, things that he's got to say, and a great way of getting them out there. So, Paul, let's talk about this cultural divide, because it intrigues me when I saw the conversation that the topic come up on our screen this morning. Tell me your thoughts here.
Well, when we were on the break, I was thinking, we see this every day, but we don't really understand. It's e pluribus unum, which is on our currency. And the Latin term for e pluribus unum is out of many, one. And when we understand the cultural divide, especially from the political or even religious standpoint, you have people who have different opinions, obviously trying to sway people to their opinion when you're referring to politics. And so one of the things, the goal is to get people together. And I think about several things that happened, like World War II. You had a Democratic president, Roosevelt, brought the country together because we had to. We also saw it in 9/11, where you had, very shocked, you had the politicians coming together for a common good of what's best for the country. And I think that's what needs to occur. And you have a lot of things going on politically, religiously right now to basically fuel that divide. And you mentioned it yourself, because media is just trying to sell the advertisement. But one of the things that goes out the window is truth. And people make decisions, their ideology is based on what they believe to be true. And I think if we could come together in a very reasonable, I think about a quote from Lincoln, malice for none, charity for all. If we simply had the approach, what's best for the country, what's best for our community, let's come together and have a discussion. And that's really what the whole cultural divide is. People are throwing mud, hoping some of it sticks, because then you're going to, for example, we have the election coming up. People are going to vote, and the people who they're voting for have certain belief systems. Have we vetted them? Do they really line up with what our own values are? Rather than being influenced by the media, who's really trying to do it to sell the advertisement, because the politicians or whoever, that's special interests, are trying to buy that advertisement so they can influence the voters. But the end result's not necessarily going to be to our benefit. I think that's the biggest concern.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I've shared on social media many times and in conversations that I have with people that if you really want to know what's going on in the world, you can't go to free news. Yep. I had a conversation at lunch yesterday with somebody. We were talking about Credit Karma, and we were talking about the idea that how do they make money? They don't. The people that are working there are not working for free, yet people go to Credit Karma and then they wonder, why is it that all of a sudden their phone gets blown up with solicitations and their email gets blown up. Well, they're selling your information. So my solution that I talk about is how do I find out what I want to talk about on my radio program is I have to pay news sources. And the news sources that I go to, I have to vet them to say, are they going to give me a slanted view or are they going to give me data for me to make my own opinion on so I can share either data or my opinion? And I tell people which is which. Now, I think now I've got an easy solution for the news, Paul. When I go out and send somebody a loan estimate, I have to put my NMLS ID number on there, telling people that I am a loan officer, I'm licensed, I'm registered, and all that kind of stuff. If the news could go out there and say this is, if they were forced to say this is news or this is commentary, then the audience can say, okay, I'm getting Ron's opinion, or Paul's just sharing the news, which is straight fact. Anybody can go and find it anywhere, and you're going to find the exact same thing no matter where you go. Just my opinion. But tell me your thoughts. How do we cross this divide?
Well, I'll give you an example, and this may be a divisive comment I'm going to make, but it's reality based on truth. If I was to ask you what's 2 + 2, the answer is going to be 4. That's never been a question. But when you start to say 2 + 2 = 7, people are like, well, that's a little crazy. And so when we're at a point in this culture society, we're questioning what's a man, what's a woman, that we're bordering into what I would call insanity, because we're questioning something that's always been a fact. And I think, yes, opinion's fine, but when you stray from reality of what is true and what is not true, then we're really in very serious trouble. And I think politically, you've got certain people or positions that are trying to influence that. And we see ultimately, for example, this is going to be my opinion, the whole thing, No Kings event that occurred. Well, we don't have a king. So it's like they're communicating a message not based on reality, because they're trying to give people the impression that Trump is a king. I'm not saying pro-Trump or not anti-Trump, but let's focus our message on what really is true. Because you're giving people false information. Then, of course, they're jumping on the bandwagon that 2 + 2 is 5. That's crazy. So a little sanity to our arguments and our discussion, and they should never become violent. We're going to have differences of opinion, but let's come together and focus on, okay, what's the truth here? There's evidence to support a man is a man and a woman's a woman. But if you're questioning the reality, what reality is, then I've got a place, and we might start the admission paper to the mental health hospital.
Yeah, and something, that's exactly right. I watched on the news yesterday, the young lady that was, I think she works for Turning Point USA, and she was abused. I mean, she was some guy that was a middle-aged guy goes and starts pushing her and knocking her to the ground because she's out there with an opinion. To me, those things never, ever have a place in our society. They can have two different opinions, but number one, a guy pushing a girl down, I guess I'm old school. There's no need for a guy to push a guy, and it's even worse when a guy's pushing a girl. Just throw that out there. You're listening to Ron Siegel Radio, discussing your real estate, current events, and the financial markets. When we come back, I'm not sure we'll get to it, but the credit score truth nobody taught you in school. All that and more. Reach me anytime. Off air number 800-306. 1990 800-306 1990 or RonSiegelRadio.com, Facebook.com/Ron Siegel Radio. And if you miss any part of our broadcast, Ron Siegel 1 on YouTube, Ron Siegel, the number 1 on YouTube. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few.
Ron Siegel Radio. Your home and mortgage connection.
Do you know a homeowner experiencing divorce? Do you know a real estate reference and the divorce decree could cost tens of thousands of dollars? A certified divorce mortgage planning and real estate report could save you thousands of dollars, and it's free from your local certified divorce lending professional. Reach out to Ron today. RonIsMyLender.com. Again, RonIsMyLender.com. Licensed under NMLS 217037, Equal Housing Lender.
You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Show with local and national expert Ron Siegel. Now, here.
Welcome back to Ron Siegel Radio. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day on Ron Siegel Radio or anytime at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. Borrow Smart segment today being brought to you by GetHomeSelect.com, GetHomeSelect.com. Don't forget, we've got that quick and easy home equity loan. About 15, 20 minutes of your time, 5 to 7 days, you got your money. Not guaranteed if you qualify. If you've got, you got to have a piece of real estate to secure it. Got to have, it's pretty simple. But again, I don't guarantee you're going to get anything. But if you qualify, it might be the good solution for you. And if you want more information on it, just send me a message. What do they call it? DM or instant message or whatever they call it, smoke signals, phone call, any of those things. We answer everything. That's the Borrow Smart segment brought to you by GetHomeSelect.com, GetHomeSelect.com. Continuing our conversation, best-selling author Paul Peters is here to share with us the solution to the cultural divide. So, Paul, we've covered a lot of stuff this morning already because we've really gone to basics. We've talked about math, and now we understand what 2 + 2 really only has one answer. Despite what our Supreme Court justice has to say, we know that there is a difference between men and women, and we can identify that. And you being an author, I guess we've got into English and language here. So what I don't even know what else we have to talk about being that we got this great divide.
Well,
where are you going with this book?
I love that you mentioned about language. So language is often used and manipulated. So if somebody breaks the law, it is they've committed some kind of violation of the law. Typically it's, termed illegal. And I love that certain people who have certain viewpoints, when somebody breaks the law, for example, they come into our country illegally. A lot of people will say, well, you can't use the word illegally, but then it's taking that one point because when you break the law, you've committed a crime, civil or criminal, but it's still illegal. And so a lot of times, and I use the example, and it's interesting, we take these polls and it's almost like, well, if a majority of people want to go that route, then does that make it right? No, if a majority of people want to jump off a mountain because they think they can fly, that doesn't necessarily make it right. And so when you, for example, this Save America Act, where basically the majority of people felt like that undocumented or illegal people should be able to not vote, to me, that is common sense, because if you're having people who are not legal and got in the right way, they're going to potentially manipulate the voting in a direction that's not necessarily best because they're just here taking advantage. So it's an interesting example of how we use language to basically influence our opinion or sway people in that direction. To me, it's very common sense. Like 2 + 2 is 4. When you're dealing with situations where somebody's here illegally, they need to be go through the process of being returned or whatever that is, and they shouldn't have rights that Americans who are here legally have the same rights. So it's to me, I just shake my head. It's like, why are we even having this discussion?
Well, the problem I see with it is, I think the last poll I saw was like 85% of America agrees with the Save America Act and voter ID. But unfortunately, there's about 200 Americans, and they all sit in Washington, D.C. in the Capitol, that for some reason don't want to see things that way.
Yeah.
Pretty ironic.
Well, it's interesting, and forgive me if I seem a little biased. Many of those individuals are in states that there's, apparent fraud, which begs the question, who's paying for their salary? Who's paying for those? All of a sudden, they got into Congress. Now I'm making $1 million, and so I think it's very interesting. We need to follow the trail of where it's leading, and why are they voting that particular way? Because that's not necessarily in the best interest of the country.
Well, it goes back to the same thing that we talked about, or I talked about with the media. And I've said this on Ron Siegel Radio many, many times. Politicians only care about one thing and one thing only, and that's called reelection.
Correct.
Right? And if they can manipulate some of these things and get reelected, that seems like that's where their excitement comes out. And I agree. We've got a comment, some comments here that are coming across, and I agree with. I think it's called. I'm hoping I'm saying your name right, Eakins. That stop breaking the law. Exactly. And if we can get people to stop breaking the law, and people to allow other folks who want to enforce the law, let them do their job. That's what they want to. They want to be doing is doing their job. So the question then becomes, how do we? Here's the problem I see, Paul, is that you get the politicians who only care about getting reelected, and they're in districts where they can get reelected. I mean, if you got a guy like Swalwell who's got reelected so many times and been able to get away with it, how do we break the cycle?
Well, there has to be accountability. I think one of the frustrating things is the DOJ, no matter what party, is trying to investigate, and very rarely do you see anyone convicted. I mean, it became so obvious because Swalwell's guilt was put in the face of all of us, and they really were forced to, remove him. And the problem is we've got all these different things that are going on in Congress, but do we ever see any result in that? Do we see people held accountable for their lies, for their fraud and different things? Rarely. And I think it's frustrating to the American people.
Yeah, and something, that's what I like in the conversations you and I have had was, aside from politics, the idea of that being accountable to helping people or helping society or trying to grow in various ways. I forgot what was that first book that you and I talked about. I don't even remember. I don't remember the name right now.
Mm-hmm. Discovering and Embracing Your Life Purpose.
Pardon me?
Discovering and Embracing Your Life Purpose, or The Inheritance, or
The Inheritance. I think that was the one that you and I spoke about, and it had a lot to do with your story. There had a lot to do with responsibility. So
I mean, the main character, Jacob Steele, basically looked at what was going on in society, brought together the best of the best to create a mentoring curriculum that was going to secure the generation going forward. I mean, if we are relying on things that are not true, i.e. 2 + 2 = 5, then we're in danger, because morally we've left the ranch. And I think we've got to make sure regardless of your religious background, there's a certain thing that's right and wrong. And if we as a country come together and say, we're going to take our diversity, we're going to come together and decide what's best for the country, because there's enough historical examples, i.e. Nazi, that became a very controlling mechanism to justify killing of millions of people. And we could head down that direction if we don't get back to 2 + 2 = 4. And that's really my point in the cultural divide. We've got to make sure we don't continue to divide as a culture, because the outcome is going to be tragic.
Yeah, it's tell us quickly how we get a hold of your books and what's the next one out.
You can find it on Amazon, or you can go to my website, paulpeters.online. And the next one comes out, Heart of Success with Jack Canfield, in June. And then Purpose Code Blueprint will be coming out in July.
Beautiful. Appreciate you coming on. So I guess we know that where we're going to be finding you in June and July, so we can talk about more books.
Sounds great. Thanks, Ron.
Appreciate you coming on. Thanks a lot. And as always, we ask, set that first radio preset button to come back here and join Ron Siegel Radio, where we only speak about items affecting your house and your bank account. Thanks to all of our sponsors. Big thanks to Josh and Sean, who are engineering us today. And of course, a special thanks to you for spending a little bit of your day with us. That's all for Ron Siegel Radio. Again, if you have any questions or to meet any of our guests, call me anytime, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or ronsiegelradio.com. And remember, make a lot of money so you can help a lot of people and have a lot of fun. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time on Ron Siegel Radio.